Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Spectrum wants to hear your views. You can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Hello, a very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, Uganda at 50. What has been the role of Parliament in shaping the country's destiny, and where will the focus be as we mark 50 years of independence? According to the Ugandan political map, the country is governed by three institutions which are critical in running the affairs of state, on top of ensuring that citizens are able to enjoy their rights and also benefit from the taxes that they pay. The executive, the judiciary, and the legislature, commonly known as Parliament, are critical in moving the country forward and are required to work together while respecting the doctrine of the separation of powers. The history of the Ugandan Parliament can be traced to as far back as the late 1800s, but the formation of a recognized body known as the LEGCO or Legislative Council only came in 1920, and at the time all its members, 7 in number, were Europeans. By the 1940s, the council was composed of Europeans, Asians, and some Africans, and on the 4th of December 1945, the first African members to the LEGCO were sworn in. In the late 1950s, pressure continued to mount for independence, leading to a series of constitutional changes, including the electoral law, allowing direct elections, and expansion in numbers. The first election resulted into an African majority, and the Democratic Party, led by Benedict Ochwanka the late, formed the majority party, while the Ugandan People's Congress, led by Apollo Milton Obote at the time, formed the opposition. Today, Ugandans are represented by the 9th Parliament, which has received a lot of credit already. This Parliament still faces a number of challenges, though, and this week the institution is marking its Parliamentary week under the theme Uganda at 50 years, Parliament's achievements, challenges, and prospects. So tonight we try to understand the challenges Uganda's Parliament is facing and its responsibility in transforming the country beyond the 50 years being commemorated this year. Our guests tonight, Ms. Hellen Kawesa, Public Relations Manager of Parliament. You're most welcome, Madam Kawesa.
Thank you very much.
We expect to be joined by Hon Dr Chris Baryomunsi, Kinkizi East Mp, also member of the Parliamentary Commission, which is the highest decision-making organ of Parliament. We also expect to be joined by Hon Bettie Kamya, President of the Uganda Federal Alliance, a former member of Parliament representing Lubaga North. Helen, please give us a history of Uganda's Parliament.
As you've ably put it, with the Parliament goes way back into the 1880s, but we are, for reasons of our debate, we are focusing more on the LEGCO and the first Parliament. As we may all know, Uganda attained its independence in 1962, but before that there had been the LEGCO in place, which was a formalized body, legislative body in Uganda. It comprised a number of members. Previously, of course, as we know, they were nominated and brought in from different courts of the federal system. But as time went by, it evolved, and when the first Parliament came in place, with time it became more democratic, and elections began. So, as we mark the 50 years of Uganda's independence, we as Parliament are also marking 50 years of coexistence with the executive and of course with the judiciary. Of course, Parliament has had, as you said rightly, an up and down history, a number of bumps here and there, whereby in some instances it has gone into abeyance, like in the times of Idi Amin, but it bounces back, and when it does, it does make an impact. So we are here today to discuss what we are going to have during this parliamentary week, where we are marking these 50 years.
Yeah, so I mean, when you talk about 1, 2, 3, 9, well, how do you gauge that? Ninth Parliament, what does that mean to the average person?
Well, the 9th Parliament means that this is the 9th. I can say Parliament, as we know, as we have had nine parliaments so far, 9. So, for each and every Parliament, if I speak in terms of now, a Parliament is 5 years. A lifespan of the Parliament is 5 years. So after every 5 years, we count that's the end of the Parliament. So this parliament we're in is the 9th parliament. It will end its lifespan with the next elections, which are in 2016.
And what does it do? What does Parliament do?
Parliament has three main roles. We have the oversight role, which we could say is overseeing how government, how the executive executes its programs. Parliament is there to see to it that to have a check and balance system of the executive. Are they fulfilling what they planned for, what they budget for? Another is legislative, which is passing laws. Parliament is there to pass laws which govern the country. Another is representative. Parliament is the voice of the people. The people who are voted into Parliament are voted to come and speak. That's one of their main roles. They expect you to speak on the floor of Parliament.
Right.
And when you speak, you're speaking for the people.
The people.
Those of us who are not inside there, so you speak for us.
Right.
Then maybe you could say another one is making the budget. That could be the fourth function of budgeting and passing the budget and showing that the money in different sectors is allocated and spent as per the budget.
You don't think that's under oversight?
Well, to an extent it could be, but then also it's a function in its own entity.
It's a poignant function.
Yes.
And Parliament, of course, it comes from the French word palma, which means
yes,
to talk.
Which means to talk or to speak.
To speak. Well, we've just been joined by our second guest, Hon Dr Chris Baryomunsi, Kinkizi East Mp, member of the Parliamentary Commission, which is the highest decision-making body of Parliament. You're most welcome, Honorable Dr Baryomunsi.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here again on the spectrum. Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, Dr. How do you gauge a legislature's performance?
Well, as we walk our democratic path in this country, and we're marking 50 years, I think Parliament has continued to play a very important role. But unfortunately, the upheavals, the instability which has been in this country has affected Parliament more than the other arms of the state. Like we know, during the time of Idi Amin's rule, there was no Parliament. But I think since then, I think Parliament as an institution has established itself, and I'm sure Parliament is making its mark, and I'm happy to be a member of the 9th Parliament. I'm sure Ugandans who follow what's going on in the country know that you cannot ignore the role the Parliament of Uganda is playing. So I think we're doing our part as Parliament. As Hellen was explaining, we are trying to fulfill our constitutional mandate and responsibilities as legislators who represent the rest of the Ugandans.
Hellen, you've been in Parliament speaking for the August House for quite some time. How would you gauge the performance of this particular one?
The 9th Parliament, yes. I think that it's a very exciting time for the Parliament now. The public, for which that's the area in which I am more involved, the opinions are very positive. The public has confidence in the Parliament because I think they can see that the Parliament has tried its best to represent the people, to speak for them, as I said, to oversee expenditure of different sectors of government, of executive. And I think that the start-off was very good. There are new members, vibrant, younger, maybe that makes it more excitement, and we're trying to involve the public more and more in this 9th Parliament so that they can also participate in what Parliament does, and they don't just sit on the sidelines and criticize and look on, but we want to encourage more and more of the public. So we have outreach programs, and therefore I think it's an exciting time, as Honorable has said, to be in Parliament.
Let's talk about this Parliamentary Week. Exactly what is it?
The Parliament Week is, as I said, we are commemorating 50 years of Uganda's independence. In around 2 weeks' time, 9th October, Uganda will mark 50 years. So the Parliamentary Commission decided that the Parliament should also commemorate this event. We have a theme, Uganda at 50, Parliament's achievements, challenges and prospects. We're going to be looking at what Parliament has achieved. What have been the challenges? What have they gone through to reach where they are? And what is their future? We started today with an interdenominational prayer service at 10 in the Parliament Conference Hall with the Joint Christian Council, and the Speaker was there. It was a very good interaction. We signed a memorandum of understanding with the civil society, so that, as I said, the civil society can become more involved in activities. they can take a front seat in what Parliament does. Tomorrow we are having a charity walk on Tuesday. We are kicking off at 9. The speaker is the chief walker.
Where are you starting off? Where are you going?
We are starting off in the northern wing of the Parliament. We are walking for 3.5 kilometers up Nile Avenue, past Speak Hotel, past Bank of Uganda, down Constitutional Square, Kampala Road, Bank of Uganda again, then down to NSSF building, the former UDM house, and up to Parliament to the Chogam Gardens. Why are we having this charity walk? We are raising funds for the conservation of the crested crane, which is a national symbol. Why the crested crane? It unifies us as Ugandans. It's a national symbol, and we are realizing that the numbers are diminishing of the crested crane because of environmental abuse and degradation. So we want to raise funds. Each and every member of Parliament and each staff member of Parliament was given a form to get a sponsor, different sponsors, to raise funds, which money we'll pull together in Parliament and give towards, I think, the Uganda Wildlife Authority to put in a project to conserve the crested crane. We also called upon.
After this show, I will want money from you and
How much are you trying to raise? I could give you one check. You know that very well. How much are you looking to raise?
Well, we shall raise as much as possible.
You must have a target, a budget. A target that you're aiming to. How much would you like to give to the Wildlife Authority?
Well, this is, I think, an open check because we need a lot of money to conserve and make sure that the Uganda crane does not get extinct. So we are mobilizing as much as individuals can give. We don't have really a ceiling.
Right. Well, you've made it difficult for me. I thought I would give a percentage of your entire budget. But let's move on. Listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, Uganda at 50. What has been the role of Parliament in shaping the country's destiny, and where will the focus be as we mark 50 years of independence? Our guest, Hon Dr Chris Baryomunsi, Member of Parliament for Kinkizi East, also member of the Parliamentary Commission, which is the highest decision-making body of that House, and Ms. Hellen Kawesa, Public Relations Manager of Parliament. We expect Honorable Bettie, President of the UFA, Uganda Federal Alliance, former Member of Parliament for Lubaga North. You will be able to call in as well and make contributions to this discussion. Sometimes they call it them 7 jam. Honorable Dr. Baryomunsi, was independence worth it after all?
Yeah, in my view, I think yes, because this was a turning point where we were transiting from colonial rule to self-rule. And as we know, we were under the leadership of outsiders, colonialists, in charge of our country, in charge of the direction of the country. And our forefathers and the struggles who were there then said no, and it was a move within the colonized communities. Said no, we've had enough. I think now we should be able to take over self-rule. And so to me, I think it was something very good, and we must appreciate all those who fought for independence. And we've since moved on. So really, in all aspects, it was positive, and we must continue to see that we manage the affairs of society, because like people elect us, we elect our own presidents, we elect our own members of parliament, and leaders at all levels, and we should be able to define our own destiny as Ugandans. So independence was good and worth it.
Is it automatic? Independence is an end itself. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I think I would agree with him because it's good to be independent. You can easily assess yourself, determine what you want, the self-determination. The countries I've been to which are not independent, a few, there's some kind of not being free. But with independence, we have freedom as Ugandans, and we're managing our own affairs. So it's up to us to determine which way to go.
Because Ugandans now can elect their own president, can elect their member of parliament. If you don't perform, they will vote you out and put someone whom they feel they have confidence in. And like those days when the colonial commissioner would be appointed from UK and he just comes to be your leader. So I think there is a big difference. Yes.
Well, we've just been joined by Honorable Bettie Olive Namisango Kamya, President of the Uganda Federal Alliance, also former MP for Lubaga North. You're most welcome, Honorable.
Thank you, Edmond.
Bettie Kamya.
Panelists and good evening, listeners. Sorry, it's the jam.
Congratulations on beating the NRM jam.
I'm telling you, I'm not so sure whether I've beaten it yet because I have to go home. after here in about an hour.
Occasioned by the NRM. Talk to us, madam, about your own view of Uganda's parliament. Has it been performing well, looking back at the 45 years we've had a legislature?
Yeah, I think it's been progressive. I mean, it's not an event. It can't be seen as an event. Here is Parliament. Day one, or you're given 5 minutes. Let's see. So there has been a progression, and I think it's been steady. Challenges, of course. I've been following the show, and Ms. Kawesa and Dr. Baryomunsi, I think I largely agree with them that there's been steady progress, basically because of the principle of the Parliament and the spirit of Parliament and representation of the people and democracy. So there's been a steady development of the legislature from the days of the, you read it, I was listening to you reading it, from the days of the white 7 men. And instead, those white 7 men were representing the interests of the Queen. They're not representing interests of Ugandans. And as it grew, they brought in Asians and some Ugandans, and then that means they embraced more diverse interests of the different communities that made up Uganda. Now we have an all-Ugandan parliament, and it's supposed to represent the interests of Ugandans. My view, my worry though, is, I'm very mindful that it's moving forward. We are moving forward in the development of democracy and parliament. My worry though, especially with the 9th or even 8th parliament, is that we might fall in the trap of not being clear about the role, particularly of separation of powers. I see Parliament performing some functions which would be more like executive functions.
Really? What are those?
E.g., and I'm very, I appreciate the vigilance and the activism and the vibrance of the 9th Parliament. But for instance, when the president appoints a minister,
and then they throw them out.
You can't have this minister
of
because
portfolio or whatever.
Of this reason. I think it borders on encroaching on executive functions, or when, for instance, they say, I think something happened, even this budget, really. The objective is noble, by all means. We all want a very good health system,
yes,
and health services. But my view is that, give all things being equal, people go to an election and they look at competing manifestos. And this time there were 8 competing manifestos.
Including yourself.
Including my own. And people, we assume, elected Mr. Museveni's manifesto. And when they elect a manifesto, they actually say, we want this manifesto to be the one to be implemented. And they give you 5 years.
Yes.
And they commit themselves to pay taxes. And they ask the president to pick his team.
Then they pick Parliament.
So the president, listen, the president picks his team, and we pay taxes. And he's supposed to go and implement, and we give him 5 years. Now, what I would like to hear is that Mr. Museveni's manifesto specifically committed themselves to increasing the budget. You know what I mean? Because that is what he's accountable for. My manifesto, for instance, clearly says that I shall establish a constitutional review, not a constitutional, a salary review commission to rationalize salaries and the public service. Now, if Mr. Museveni's manifesto does not specifically commit himself on increasing the budget of the ministry, then his manifesto did not say that. So what is happening is that the voters voted for something else.
And Parliament is mixing it all around.
Cleaning up.
Well, but Parliament is also elected by...
No, what I'm saying is...
Some perspective
listen, just let me finish this point. Because if we want to grow our democracy, the voter has got to understand.
So, Madam Kawesa, that's a controversial point. Is the legislature really... I mean, that's a controversial point. Let's not leave it unchallenged. Let's hear from... Is it really overstepping its boundaries?
I think at the beginning I said that there are three main roles.
You explained them.
Of Parliament. So Parliament is there to oversee and to represent people. If the Parliament sees that there's a need somewhere, and the people are crying out for this, for who call the grassroots, so that MPs, they need some issue here and there, I think the Parliament can say, fine, we still the space, there's some need for an improvement here. So I think it's in their mandate. I wouldn't think that...
Mind you, I'm not blaming anybody.
No, I think you made your point very clear.
No, I
and it's a strong point.
Even clear. It was like this. Because I know you will come in and correct it. I am not blaming Parliament. I am blaming the designers or the design of the Constitution.
I think we understand that principle. Honorable, let's hear from Dr. Baryomunsi.
I'm surprised.
You think the oversight role should not be there? Should be taken out?
In the East Parliament, and she was one of those strong members of Parliament who wanted a strong Parliament. But now she's the party president. She's shifting goalposts.
No,
really,
it's not the roles.
Like on appointment of ministers, clearly says it's a shared responsibility. The president nominates, Parliament approves. Approving doesn't mean rubber stamp that whatever the president sends, then the Parliament must clear. There is a process of vetting, and if you are found short of the requirements, Parliament has the constitutional power to say no. And that's why the first set of ministers, about 4 or 5,
6 were left out,
could not be accepted.
Couldn't get their jobs.
Even now, they
left out 2. One eventually.
Professor Lubaga was eventually cleared.
The old man.
About still has issues. I think Parliament is doing its work. Unless if you want to say that all the nominees of the president must be cleared by Parliament, which I don't think is the spirit and letter of the Constitution. On the budget, the Constitution is very clear in that the executive proposes a budget, but the budget is appropriated by Parliament. What does appropriation mean? We are representatives of the people. We look at the estimates and the proposals from government, and we have power to vary the estimates. I think one article, I don't recall, 255.4, it clearly says the estimates laid on the table in Parliament. A committee of Parliament and the Parliament have powers and authority to vary the figures proposed by government. So that's why we are saying, for instance, that the health sector in this country is not doing well, and we should cut some expenses which we feel are consumptive, like travel abroad, travel inland, the tea which is being taken in the offices, in some of the ministries. We cut it and enhance the health sector budget to better the
service delivery
in Uganda, and it is within the powers of Parliament. So,
all right, we're going for a break now. We'll be back. This is Spectrum on Radio. We'll be back.
Says that it shows our Parliament increasing.
Everybody talking like this in the car, this in the bar. Doesn't even matter wherever you are. With overload, what you really don't know is one number. You get a little bit more.
A little longer. Send text to all your loved ones and laugh a little longer.
Get 15% extra airtime guaranteed every time you load with MTN. Simply dial *145#. Get talking all day up to midnight with MTN Overload.
MTN, everywhere you go.
When I sit from the night, I feel my soul come alive. Memories gliding back. I climb the hills of Kinkizi. I see the walls of Chibu. I hear the roar of the lion in me. When I sit from the Nile.
As we celebrate 50 special years, Nile Special invites you to toast to our great land. Nile Special, the rich, rewarding taste from the source. You've earned it.
When I sit from the Nile.
Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back. Welcome on Spectrum tonight. Uganda at 50. What has been the role of Parliament in shaping this country's destiny, and where will the focus be as we mark 50 years of independence? Our guests tonight, Hon Dr Chris Baryomunsi, Member of Parliament for Kinkizi East, also member of the Parliamentary Commission, which is the highest decision-making body of Parliament, Ms. Hellen Kawesa, Public Relations Manager of Parliament, and Hon Bettie, Kamya, President of the Uganda Federal Alliance, also former Member of Parliament for Lubaga. But you will be able to call in and contribute to this discussion. Honorable Kamya, you say you hate the oversight role of Parliament.
No, I don't hate it. No. I need to be understood. The reason we are having this conversation is to strengthen our democracy and our democratic institutions. That is why I'm saying I get a bit nervous when, for instance, if I say that Parliament borders on fusing the legislative arm with the legislature, and that's not a good
the legislative arm with the executive.
With the executive.
Explain that.
And that's not a good thing.
Can you explain that?
And I'm not blaming MPs because they are doing what is constitutional. I am questioning the design of the constitution, whether it is democratic. And there are many things in the constitution which I question. For instance, the power that is given to the president. I always question.
Let's talk since we're talking about Parliament tonight. Let's talk specifically, because you seem to be opposing the oversight role of Parliament, which many people think
I'm not opposing it. I am questioning myself whether they are not fusing the role of Parliament.
Madam Kawesa, can you explain that to us a little? Because I think you've made it very clear. You said Parliament, when they vet ministers, they really are getting fused with the executive. Is that the perception? Does that really come out that way?
I think this Honorable Baryomunsi elaborated on it and made it clear. The Constitution spells it out clearly, what Parliament should do and what the executive should do. So I don't think that there's a fuse, but as Honorable Kamya was saying, maybe her issues with the Constitution, not necessarily the Parliament.
No, that's absolutely.
Parliament
so it is not with Parliament.
Cardinal function of oversight.
Yes.
The executive is given resources, is given those executive
and somebody has to call them accountable.
But they must be checked. Somebody must call them to account. And we are the people who are directly representing the population. So we must.
One time I was having this conversation. One time I was having this conversation with the former British High Commissioner, Francois somebody. I think we're discussing this particular thing. And he said, in the UK, if the government was forced to change the budget, they would have to resign. Absolutely. Meaning
that if Parliament does not vote the budget and say no to the national budget, then there will be a vote of no confidence.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
That's different than what is happening.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yes. That he said, if for instance the government presents a budget and Parliament has issues that budget, not totally, totally is your word. I'm saying what he told me, and rejects the budget or amends it. The government would have to resign.
No. It is when the Parliament totally rejects the budget proposal. That's when it's a vote of no confidence in the government.
Yeah, but who would totally reject?
Let's try to avoid it.
It can't happen.
The Parliament, like Israel, have been in Israel almost every week, every Friday, they vote on a no confidence vote in the Parliament because the ruling party has a minority.
Yeah, but it can't be on the total. Nobody can totally reject a budget as if the government has no.
The coalition, which coalition is shaking? It can happen.
Helen Kawesa, could you give us some light on the current standoff between Parliament and the executive? What exactly is it about?
I think the standoff, as you call it, would be that the Parliament has identified some areas, as Honorable was saying, Baryomunsi, in the health sector, because the health sector has been doing very badly. So they feel that the money that was allocated in the budget of this financial year, which started, is not adequate. So what they did was understudy the budget and look at some areas where they feel there may be some money which can be, maybe, I don't know, where diverted or sent from one sector and elevated to the health sector to be able to improve it. So that's the discussion that is going on currently.
Let me add on that. Yes. You see, the Health Committee of Parliament made a report and clearly stated that the health sector in this country is doing poorly. A lot of us agree. And the biggest challenge is the human resource crisis. And they presented to Parliament that 260 billion is immediately needed to fix the health sector. And this matter was sent to the Budget Committee of Parliament. And when they looked into the budget, they said, given that these are the tail end of the budgeting process, we can only realize 39.2 billion shillings. And this was cutting from some of the consumptive areas within the government budgets, like the travel abroad, the special meals, advertising and the public relations, fuel costs and so forth, which we feel are not core activities of ministries. And this argument that if you cut off defense, it will undermine security, we don't agree with it. I mean, special meals, tea which you take in the office, even if you reduce it, shall we become more insecure?
There will be no food.
So we say we don't touch on the core activities of ministries, but we touch on these consumptive areas. Only 30% of the annual budget minus vote on account which had already been passed. And we feel this can still be done, and there will be no disruption and no distortion within the national budget.
There have also been complaints about the size of Parliament. 300 members, only about 75 get to speak in the end.
It is the same Ugandans who are demanding for districts. Yes. The president was in Goramboli on Saturday, and the members were saying of the community that they should split Goramboli into two constituencies.
No, but the constitution says
Ugandans who demand for creation of districts, constituencies that actually sway.
So whatever they ask for, you give them. If they ask for federalism, you give them federalism.
No.
Give them what suits you.
But Edmond, what I wanted to bring out in this is that the majority of members of Parliament are NRM MPs who voted for Mr. Museveni's manifesto. What I would like to hear,
NRM manifesto.
Okay, NRM manifesto. What I would like to hear from Dr. Baryomunsi is that they are holding the executive accountable to that section in the manifesto which says that we shall increase this health budget. Let me finish. That's what I would like to hear, because if they vote for a manifesto and then when they get into Parliament they turn around and fight that manifesto, that's where I'm seeing a confusion. That's what I'm seeing, a confusion. So I'm saying, and I'm going to check the NRM manifesto next time, maybe if I come here. I'm going to check and see what that manifesto, because we must lead Ugandans to be very focused on the manifesto. What I would like to hear from Dr. Baryomunsi is that Mr. Museveni's or NRM manifesto said that we shall increase the budget of the health sector and work on the personnel, and that is what you are holding him accountable. Yes, if not, then you are encroaching on my manifesto, which the people should have voted for in the first place.
I'm surprised that as a former presidential candidate, she didn't read the manifestos of other parties. She should have read the NRM.
Yeah, because it is not there.
Clearly, it is there. Clearly, the NRM promised Ugandans that it will improve the performance of the health sector. That's not in the district. And that's why we are saying that as NRM, the government in power, we must be seen delivering better health services. And we are saying the way the budget has been structured, more resources should be allocated to the health sector. And we're actually raising a bigger question, the need to realign the NRM manifesto to the budgeting process of this country. We have raised this in the caucus and the other discussions. So, true, NRM promised Ugandans better health care.
Yeah, that's
why even in the Parliament, you have seen the biggest voice is actually coming from the NRM side itself on this issue of the health budget. That's why even when the Prime Minister was trying to make his statement, we said no. Improvement of health care in this country will be a plus for NRM. So that's why there is unanimity, there is one voice in the Parliament that we must improve the health sector. So
I have no problem with improving the health sector. I just was worried about the bit of chaos.
You weren't sure it was in their manifesto?
I wasn't sure that was in their manifesto. I'm going to check that manifesto.
Maybe you think there's no health in the NRM manifesto?
No, it is not emphasized.
I think they don't mention health as a cause.
No. I have read it. I have a copy.
But they're not sure.
Help us to get this spell. Do you think the legislature is free from the other arms? Because technically they're supposed to operate independently of each other.
I think that there's a degree of independence that's necessary for the institution of Parliament to operate. But on the other hand, I think that this need to work together as well. So you can't really distance yourself completely and say, go your way and I go mine. But I think that as we are seeing now, this kind of discussion that is going on between the legislature and the executive shows that the parliament can stand and say, well, we don't agree with you on this, let's do some more work on it. I think that's a very good sign that there's independence, and the public should have confidence that the legislature is independent.
And how is this impasse likely to be resolved? The 39.2 billion shillings asked for the health sector by Parliament?
Well, the
executive says there's no money.
No, I think the president is conceding. I was just watching his press conference in Washington today, where he's saying he now agrees health center force should be managed by 49 members of staff immediately, and health center 3s by 19 members of staff, and the health sector needs to be resuscitated. He made those remarks, so we are, I think, concurring.
Well, but the point is, where's the money going to come from? Is it a supplementary budget? Is it a squeeze from within the Ministry of Health itself?
No, for us, our conviction as members of Parliament that the money can be realized from within the budget. We can rearrange the existing resources to actually raise some of this money that we want.
Honorable Kamya, what's your view? Where should that money be coming from, Antonio?
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Chris is right. You know, there's a lot of money in this country. There's a lot. I don't think, from what we are seeing, we don't even need budget support from donors. The way the money is abused and misused, I think we might not even be needing budget support from the donors. So I agree with Dr. Baryomunsi that if you rearrange the budget, you'll get what you want. But my original question was about the design of the Constitution. And as I was saying, the Constitution says ministers can be MPs, and we have questioned it. Should ministers be MPs?
What's your view there?
My view is that they should be separated. They are executive ministers. They should not be, again, they should not present and then debate and pass, especially when there are so many. So there are many things in the Constitution that needs to be redesigned and rearranged so that we grow our democracy. I'm not against increasing this. I'm just questioning the design as we grow our democracy, the design of our Constitution to further grow our democracy.
And some people have said we should have a Senate, a higher house, and
I totally agree. Absolutely.
What kind of composition would you support there?
I don't know. It would depend on the functions, of course. It would first of all depend on the we have to first of all to define the functions of Senate, and then define the composition.
If you also design something, what would you propose, for instance?
The Senate, first of all, should be of fewer people and representing a larger constituency. You know, like say in the U.S., the senator represents a state, you know, whereas a Congress represents a constituency. So there are about 400 constituencies and about 50 Congress people. So a Congress is a higher body that oversees, actually. It creates some checks and balances. I think we need a Senate.
All right. Maybe perhaps before we hear from the listeners, let's look at, in the past, the President could dissolve Parliament. He cannot do that now. What happens if the stalemate persists beyond the constitutional deadline?
I think that, as the Honorable has said, if you're talking about
what would happen? Let's look at a scenario. What would happen?
In the current,
yes.
If there was a
complete statement, Parliament says no.
Parliament would have to say, because we would sit and supply the figures which we feel are appropriate as Parliament, and the Parliament will have its day at the end of the day, because the power to appropriate the resources is with the function of Parliament.
Yes.
But usually we do it in consultation so there is harmony. Yeah, but should you fail to have harmony,
Parliament would have its
yes.
Well, listen. Well, but there have been times when money has been spent and it's not been passed through Parliament, and it's brought later supplementary budgets, especially with State House.
Yes, the law allows that the government can.
Well, only up to a certain percentage.
Can spend up to 3% of the budget, and then within, I think, 4 months, they bring those expenditures to Parliament for approval.
But they've been spending well beyond 33%.
Yeah, sometimes, and that's the discipline which we always condemn. And I think as we move, we must tighten and make sure there is a discipline in the budgetary expenditure.
Well, but the budget infrastructure has also been a little bit weak in some areas. For instance, this year, the state has got just about 50 billion, which is only just about a third of what they spent last year.
Yes, we try to progressively tighten, but there are challenges which we are facing. But like on the issue of supplementaries, I think we are saying even this financial year we must reduce as much as possible supplementary expenditure, except in the circumstances like floods and emergencies. But really we must plan for our activities and fit within the planned budget.
All right, let's hear from you, dear listeners. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. You can call in now. Our numbers 0414 348 111, 0312 260 390, 0312 261 390. When you call in, please tell us your name and where you're calling from. Spectrum, hello.
Hello, Edmond, good evening.
Good evening to you. Your name, sir?
Yeah, this is Peter Wamboga Mugiri. I want to thank you very much for hosting those great people in the studio. And Edmond, for me, across the board, when you see issues of disagreement in your studio, it shows that we are doing things really wrongly. And I believe that at the age of 50 years, surely this country should do differently and do better. For instance, Edmond, this country is well endowed in its natural resource endowment. The best endowment is the human resource. But how much is our human resource being used and prioritized in order for this country to grow better? What I mean is look at the health sector. How can the health sector not be a priority in a country? Surely, even if you talk of defense being a priority, you need very healthy people to defend their country. You need health as a priority number one so that education is better. If children are not well fed, are not well treated, they will not perform well academically. You will not get skilled manpower. You cannot talk of industrialization without a healthy population.
Spectrum, hello. Good evening.
My name is Bettie.
Hedili from Kanongo. You're welcome.
I think the issues that I want to raise, Edmond, I very much agree with Honorable Kamya. What is the difference on this gold train? What is the difference between parliamentary appointment committee and parliamentary approval committee? Because these so-called people who come before the appointment committee, like for example, they say they are not qualified to be ministers. Now, what does the commission say? If you can't be minister, why does it say in parliament? Secondly, the reason why they raise as officials of their leadership, we are there agree that they raise. But to our MPs who are claiming now to be fighting for us, are they patriotic enough? Why don't they give that to their money for their cars and they work on their sector education or something? And we said, now you are talking, you are leading, you are not being led, neither are you being forced. Thank you.
Spectrum, hello.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Your name, my friend. Good evening.
Yes, my name is Edmond, and I thank you for this program. One is that I think there's a fight now. We have realized that there's a fight between the executive and the president. So we need to harmonize this. We want the president to the president to tell him, Doctor, you should really stop the president because this is a crisis. I don't think the president has gone down to see what is in the villages, what is in the local.
We lost you there, Godfrey. Spectrum, hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, your name?
Yeah, this is my name. I think what I'm doing as a family, they are doing this. Lubaga, but it's not that my own thing. Because it's the whole executive to protocol. So to cap.
Okay. It's better you switch off your radio when you talk to us so you don't get that feedback as you hear your Spectrum, hello.
Yes, thank you. My name is Yusuf.
Yes, Yusuf.
And I'm calling from Rosera. I have one or two concerns, but then I'm looking at the issue of raising the budget. maybe one thing I would like to add on that is that aren't we creating some more space for people to go on with corruption? Because if you're realizing drugs expiring from drug shops, realizing drugs expiring from national stores, and at the same time realizing corruption all over all sectors, all government ministries. And this is the time we are saying that let's increase money at this department or at this ministry. Can we look at the loopholes in the ministry? As the money being allocated to the ministry being used well before we add the money to that ministry? So before we actually, I'm in support to the reason.
All right.
But then I also want to see as the money that has been allocated, they are being used properly.
Okay, Spectrum, hello? Hello? Yes, your name?
My name is Julius. I'm calling from Lansana.
Yes, Julius.
I entirely want to agree with Honorable Chris Baryomunsi and to disagree with Honorable Kamya. The challenge is that if something must stand up for the right of Uganda, nobody will. Look at me supporting the system that she knows when she gets there, she will listen to the camera. Thank you, Honorable. Please keep it up.
Thank you. Let's get straight back to the studio. Madam Hellen Kawesa, spokeswoman of the House. Talk to us.
Well, someone asked about the Parliamentary Appointments Committee. I think the roles of that committee is in the Constitution. It's constitutional. It has its mandate to do what it does.
The Appointments Committee and the Approvals Committee.
Parliament's Appointments Committee is the same, which vets presidential appointments.
Yes.
All presidential appointments are vetted by this committee as per the Constitution. So all it's doing its work. And I think we should encourage Ugandans to allow committees and the bodies to do their work. Because it's surprising that in the past, when people were just, I don't want to go too much because I speak for Parliament. People were saying that Parliament is too quiet, it just pushes through people. I think that Parliament should be given a chance to do its work. If you see that there's a problem, it will be addressed. Or any other issues that have come forth from the committee are addressed between the Speaker and the Head of State. And if it's solved, it's solved. If it's not, we move on. But I think that Ugandans learn to let the Parliament do its work and appreciate that it's doing its work.
Madam Bettie, Kamya.
No, I mean, I have no problem with Parliament because, like Helen said, they are doing the job. And the job that is mandated to them according to the Constitution. And I've said that my problem is the Constitution. For instance, Parliament oversees the executive, but President has the power to appoint any member of Parliament to become a minister or an ambassador or whatever. So, and they are right because they are politicians and they have a career to build. So it's natural for a member of Parliament to become a minister because that is growing in his career. But he's looking to the President, whom he's overseeing, to appoint him a minister. And when he appoints him a minister, that very vocal MP will now assume the role of collecting responsibility and stop talking. That's why I'm saying that really, if we're growing our democracy, we need to redesign the Constitution so that you cannot be overseeing the person whom you are looking to. In case you fail, the next election, he's the one you run to for a job. Like most of these people who fail, they
but you say they've overstepped their boundaries, so it looks like there's not been evidence of conflict of interest.
But there is, you can say it. All those people who failed in the elections, they run to the President to give them.
Well, but from the output side, so you don't seem to see evidence of that kind of overlap.
Which kind of overlap?
Conflict of interest. People expected to be appointed ministers, not.
Of course, we say there are people who are very vocal.
Well, let's look at it holistically.
Yeah, that's what it is, because everybody is looking at the future. The President.
No, but I mean, it might look academic because the output is that they are being too heavy on the executive, and you're saying under this dispensation we have, they are going to be weak on the executive.
No, I don't think that's what I mean. What I mean is that if the President exerted all the influence he has, given to him by the Constitution, he can weaken Parliament. That's why you need a situation where Parliament is not the one overseeing the President who can weaken it. I'm not
So
so
we should
sure.
never see the
I'm not
president.
so sure that's what I mean. But I'm showing you, no, what I'm showing you, and I think you can see it, the possible conflict of you overseeing
Well,
the
if we
person.
begin to look academic, how we should oversee the
I
president?
don't know. I think we need to put our heads together. I don't have all the answers, but I'm showing you a gap. I'm not saying that I'm the one who has got something to fill it.
It is not true that all of us who are in the parliament are dying to be ministers. I would want to be appointed a minister of merit. So I have remained independent-minded and do my role.
Yeah, but you become a collective responsibility when you become a minister.
And I think the 9th parliament is behaving like that. That's why we're able to stand up the president in our caucus, in parliament. We disagree with the position of the prime minister if we think what we are pushing is right and in the interest of Ugandans. That's why the appointments committee can say, no, you have nominated so and so, but we feel he or she is not suitable to be a minister because the ministerial responsibility is too heavy for this kind of person. So I think even when the constitution says we oversee the executive, I think we have continued to exercise our independence despite those shortcomings that Bettie Kamya is raising. And therefore I want to ask Ugandans to keep having trust in the 9th parliament, that even when the majority of us are in the ruling party, the president is our chairman of the party, we can still check the excesses of the government.
As we go, perhaps Madam Hellen Kawesa, PR Manager of Parliament, talk to us again once more about this Parliament Week. What exactly is going to happen?
Yes.
Who is allowed to walk?
Everybody is invited to join us. We had some corporate companies coming on board to give us some sponsorship towards the crested crane, and we'll make them public.
Not walk to work. Well, you'll be walking to work, but
walk to save the crested crane.
Right.
Wednesday, we're having a lot of Parliamentary Institute at Parliament.
That's a new thing in this country.
It's a new thing.
Yes.
Parliamentary studies.
An initiative of the Speaker, Rebecca Kadaga.
Yes, because we gather in the Parliament from different professional backgrounds. We want to put in place a mechanism where we give skills, where we build the capacity of members of Parliament to be better legislators, better representatives of the people who vote us in the Parliament. So we hope this is going to be a very big innovation.
That's a landmark thing. For the first time we have an...
Then we have on Thursday a public lecture by Professor Nwagaba. Discussant is Honorable Nekion, Imperial. Please come and see them. See us.
Wednesday afternoon we have football and netball.
Yes.
And we want to invite members of the public.
MPs will be playing football in Achivu.
So you see how acrobatic there.
Somersaults. We've seen somersaults, all of somersaults on this floor. Now we'll see the result. We have to go instead our time cuts us. So thank you very much, dear guests.
Friday we shall have a special sitting in the morning to debate the Uganda at 50 years, Parliament's achievements, challenges and prospects in the Parliament of Uganda.
Thank you very much.
We shall honor distinguished people who have contributed to parliamentary democracy in this country.
Well, quite a